Who's on the Upper West Side. She has some information for us. Sarah.
Roz and Bill, this is something you don't see very often here on Columbus Avenue on the Upper West Side during rush hour. Virtually a ghost town. Police car going off right behind me. I want to tell you that the NYPD has done what's called a level 2 mobilization. They have called in everybody into their commands except for the midnight tour, which is going to report on their normal schedule tonight. Everybody is being called into their commands immediately. Now, for those of you who might have been here on November 9th, 1965, what happened today during rush hour just might bring back a sense of deja vu. Subway trains throughout the system screeched to a halt.
Oh, everything just went completely black, and everybody started panicking and pushing towards the door. There was no air in there at all to breathe. You couldn't breathe at all.
I'm shaky, but I'm glad I'm out of there. It's really muggy, and there's some girls, actually, they need an evacuation routine. This is ridiculous. There was no emergency evacuation plan whatsoever. We're just sitting on there. They don't tell you anything.
No one did, at least for several minutes, as clocks and much of the Northeast came to a dead stop shortly after 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
For some reason or other, there was a power failure in northern New York or southern Canada that cascaded down through the system and affected the power grid as far east as Connecticut, as far south as New Jersey, and as far west as Ohio.
You got a brownout first, and then as my train tried to leave out the station, it just boop.
An incredible sight as traffic lights went blank. Pedestrians became impromptu traffic cops. Massive evacuations as people spilled out from train stations and high-rise buildings. The FAA immediately grounded planes at all 3 New York airports because the blackout affected security screening facilities. Hospitals, except for downstate in Brooklyn, immediately went to backup power with no problem. 2 hours after the blackout began, some good news from the mayor.
We will be starting up power in the city. It will take a decent amount of time, hours, not minutes, and nobody really can be any more specific than that.
Ago, all officers, all nearly 30,000 police officers in New York City have been called into their commands except for the midnight tour, which is supposed to report as usual. Again, I want to take you to this scene. It's pretty amazing here on Columbus Avenue. Virtually a ghost town on the street. People you can see walking up and down, going where they need to go on foot, because at this point, that's the best way to get around. Live from the Upper West Side, Sarah Wallace, ABC7 Eyewitness News.
All right, thank you, Sarah. And Sarah had mentioned about the previous major blackouts on November 9th, 1965 and July 1977. Back in 1977, it took 25 hours for the power to be turned back on.
It will take less than that this time.
We hope so, yes. We hope so. 11 o'clock tonight is when Con Ed is hoping to have some of the power turned back on here in New York City. We're going to turn now to Lauren Glassberg, who's in Plainview, Long Island. We're in Long Island. They're hoping to have parts of the electricity turned on by 9 o'clock tonight. Lauren, can you hear us?
Yeah, Liz, and in fact, some good news. They can literally see the light, and I'm not just talking figuratively. In Selden and parts of Fort Jefferson, we're hearing reports that the power is coming back on, at least on an intermittent basis. So good news there. Our first stop on Long Island was at the Keyspan headquarters, where sure enough, they were without power, but they had a generator on, and at that point, this was very early, shortly after 4, they really had no comment and no explanation for what had happened. But throughout the area, we've traveled through Hicksville. I'm in Plainview right now. People are just being really courteous, the same sort of thing that we've been showing all afternoon on TV, which has been happening in the city and in New Jersey. People directing traffic, people going slow on the roads, and a kind of community feeling. The neighborhood where I am, I feel it's this suburban effect, and by that I mean that a lot of spouses are stuck in the city. They can't get back to Long Island because of the trains being at the LIRR. So these families are bonding together and making do without their loved ones and having these block parties, cooking food and making sure all the kids on the street are taken care of and well fed while their parents may be stuck in the city. So that's certainly a nice aspect. We drove by North Shore Hospital. They're up and running. They're on a generator. And on Old Country Road, things were moving pretty slow as well, but cautiously. I'm going to walk down the street a little bit here to see how people are doing in this neighborhood. in plain view, and people sitting on the steps right now. I'm joining two women. They're hanging out with their kids. What's their name?
Michelle Rosner.
All right, Michelle, tell us a little bit about how this has been for you and how you're making do without the power. You have little ones running around.
Without the videos, it's a little tough. And, we had to find an open pizza place to give them some dinner. And it's really hot. Jordan is sweating his butt off.
Okay, well, we'll make it nice for TV. But, they did find a nice place, a pizza restaurant that uses gas ovens, and that's really convenient. And a lot of people have been turning on their gas grills to cook up the food and make sure that they don't lose all that food, of course, while it's defrosting. Now, I'll talk to another neighbor here. What's your name?
Sherry Weber.
All right, Sherry, tell me a little bit about how this experience has been for you and your family.
It's been a little difficult, but we're making do, right, Jacob? Outside the house. Too hot inside the house, so we're just making do outside.
All right, how many hours are you expecting this is going to take?
Hopefully not too many more.
But, people are in good spirits, Liz and Bill, and I think that's a great theme here. Initially people say, oh, is it terrorism? But once they realize that it's not all good news, people are just kind of chilling, so to speak, and enjoying the night together.
Well, that's good to hear. Lauren, thank you. Kate, one quick question for you. Since it is around 7:15 in the evening now, has it started cooling off outside?
It's really not too bad out here. I was shooting hoops with some of the kids here, and that's when you get a little hot. But otherwise, Liz, the sun's going down and things are getting a lot cooler. I talked to some people with mobile homes, and they have generators. So some people are asking their friends to come into the mobile homes and cool off with those air conditioning units. And another savvy tool for parents who have minivans with those DVD players or video players. Some of the kids are being put in the van so that they can...
Okay, Lauren. Thank you. We are waiting for Governor Pataki to... I'm sorry, I'm going to ask Dave. Dave, did you say you want to take this? Okay, Governor Pataki is having a press conference. We're going to join him in progress.
With the courage and with the calmness that we expect from New Yorkers who are used to having to deal with situations not necessarily of this magnitude. I don't know the cause of the outage. I don't think anyone can tell you that at this point. We've heard reports that it was caused by a transmission problem originating in Ontario and Canada, but I can't verify that that is in fact the case. We have our emergency forces working overtime. We have a system where we can contact every single hospital and nursing home in the state, and all of them, as we speak, have power. There were 2 in Queens that needed power, and working with the city emergency management team was able to get them generation. We have the thruway rest centers are open, all of them on emergency power if people feel a need to pull over and stop and just go someplace else. We do have state police and National Guard on reserve if requested by any locality for assistance, but as I said, at this point there is no unmet request. The MTA has done a tremendous job. There were almost 600 trains, subways, Metro North, Long Island Railroad that were stranded when the power outage occurred. All but 6 have been evacuated. And it's just been a tremendous cooperative effort. New York City PD, Port Authority PD, MTA PD, local PD, and most importantly, as I said, the people of New York just helping each other. The effort to restore the power is immense and is being done statewide, but I am advised we cannot just independently of the Northeast grid begin to put significant parts of the state back on power. We have been working with the Pennsylvania, Maryland, and New Jersey grid. We have been with their ISO, independent system operator. We have been working with the New England independent system operator in the hopes that within hours, but I don't want to predict when, we will be able to see power begin to be restored in various parts of the state. I just want to urge people, if they do have power, or if they do get power back and they're watching this or listening on a radio, to disconnect all unnecessary appliances. We're obviously going to be dealing with an emergency for some time, and to the extent people can help by reducing their demand if they do have power, it will help us to restore power across the state as quickly as possible. Also, as is always the case, whether it's an ice storm or other emergency, if you are comfortable in your home and know that you're okay and your family's okay, look in on your neighbors, particularly if you have senior citizens or other people with special needs, to see if you can help them out. in any way. Because the way we've always gotten through difficult times as New Yorkers is not just government working together at all levels, and we are, but it's been individuals helping individuals and staying calm and not just taking care of themselves, but seeing if they can reach out and help a friend, help a neighbor, help someone who might have greater needs than they do. I am extremely confident that just as we've been challenged in the past and come through with flying colors in a way that the rest of the country and the rest of the world have looked up to, so we will do it this time as well. We have challenges ahead of us, obviously, with the fact that the power will not be restored instantaneously, but we're going to meet those challenges. The government will be there, the local governments will be there, most importantly, New Yorkers will be there, and I'm confident we're going to come through this again, strong, shoulder to shoulder as New Yorkers. Questions?
Are you concerned when it gets dark, what might happen in populated areas like that?
I'll tell you, New Yorkers respond to crisis by helping each other and by acting responsibly. And I just believe that that will be the case tonight. We're prepared to help local governments. We're prepared to help the city. But I think New Yorkers are going to respond the way we always do, and that is to understand that a crisis is a time to help others. I don't want to give a number, but well over half the people of the state are without power. I don't want to put a number on it, but Bill, Flynn, what would you say is the number? Yeah, more than half. We don't have a specific number. 19 million population. A very significant percentage. Well, we don't know what the cause was, but it clearly shows that the grid system didn't work the way it's supposed to. We had this Northeast outage back, I guess, in the 60s, and it wasn't supposed to happen again. It has happened again. And there have to be some tough questions asked as to why. Part of the system did work well. The tripping of the power plants, as I understand it, as they have been disconnected and shut down, has gone exceptionally well. The power plants have not been disabled, not been damaged. There was a report of smoke at a Con Ed facility in New York City. That was an anticipated part of an orderly shutdown. So we are unaware of any damage to the plants themselves. They did trip and become deactivated in an orderly and far better way than was the case in the 60s, but it shouldn't have happened in the first place.
Governor, does this show the need for the siting law to be passed by the legislature?
Which power are not right next door to each other, for example? Much of Albany has power, much of Colony does not.
A lot of it is simply dependent on the grid, on where the capacity to generate exists without jeopardizing the plant because of incompatibilities within the grid. So that some areas will be able to have power, some will be able to come back sooner than others. But we're trying to be very careful to get it back as quickly as possible, but in a way where there is no damage to the system, and that we will bring it back in a way that allows for us to have long-term confidence in the operations of the system.
Governor, does this show the need for the siting law?
Because there's so many police officers now working on this, so many state officials working on this,
No, not at all. No, we are, the city and the state and all the local officials are prepared and ready to respond if there's any call made. And as I said now twice, there have been no unanswered requests for assistance, whether it's power generating. We do have emergency generating capacity at the State Emergency Management Office and in the National Guard. The National Guard units that have that power generating capacity have been activated, as have others, but there is no call. We have had some calls. Some counties have requested generating assistance, and we've provided those.
Does this show that we need to add to the capacity here in New York and that we need to pass the siting?
Well, clearly to me, it has always been important that we have siting capacity and generating capacity within New York State. And the Power Authority has done just a tremendous job, and thank God for some of the plants we've been able to get up and running over the last few years, but obviously having a stronger law that would allow utilities to build and site plants in New York quickly is important, and I would urge that that be done.
Governor, just two questions quickly. Are there any reports of deaths or injuries?
I have not heard of any. I have not heard of any at this point.
The other thing is, can you tell us anything you know about the prospects for restoring power in New York City? What is that an hour?
I don't want to speculate. It is. I just don't want to. I know everybody's working very hard on it, and as I said, the plants themselves, the integrity of the system was protected during the shutdown of the grid itself. So we're hopeful that because of that, when the grid is ready, we'll be able to bring the plants up relatively quickly. Bill, is that correct? Yes.
Mayor Bloomberg said in the last hour or so that you offered the National Guard to go to New York City. He says he thinks that the police can take care of everything there. Do you think that there's still a need for the National Guard? In fact, the Nightfall is not.
I have confidence in the mayor's judgment, and New York City Police Department is the best in the world. And if they believe that they have it under control, I have absolute confidence that they do. We're just there as a backup, not just to New York City, but to any municipality that feels it needs help. We have right now more than 2,000 state police on active duty, and we have others on standby, and we're communicating with local officials. But this is a great state. We have great teamwork and tremendous experience in handling emergencies, and I'm confident we'll handle this as well as we've had the ones in the past.
Where were you when it went out?
Yes, they have. They went through an orderly shutting down as the grid itself was shutting down.
Governor, where were you when?
I don't want to project. I think that will depend on the grid as well as the ability to bring the plants up.
Governor, where were you when the police
emergency could rise to the level of power emergency experienced by Californians, or
we have, as I said, I only have heard some reports that the origin was out of Ontario, Canada, but we really don't know at this point the cause for this. But we do know that in New York State and in our capacity, we had adequate capacity. We showed it 2 years ago when we had that 110-degree heat wave in New York City and on Long Island. We were able to meet the demand. So I don't want to predict the consequence of this failure of the regional grid, but our system, we know, is sound and has capacity.
Is there any special precautions being taken at borders, or
we have been.
Governor? Did we lose the governor? I think we lost the governor. You were listening. Are we on? Can you hear me? Okay. We're on. We lost the remote. The governor George Pataki at his press conference, or dealing with a wide range of issues. We lost the signal. We did not have pictures. You were watching pictures that have come into the Eyewitness newsroom from our crews out there, who went out immediately when this thing hit about 4 o'clock today. And one answer that one of the reporters was asking, and the governor didn't hear it, or we heard it, the question and not the answer. Governor, where were you when the lights went out? And we didn't hear it, but I think everyone will remember where they were. I was looking at you when the lights went out.
And I was looking at you when all of a sudden the newsroom went dark here.
We have reporters out there.
7.
I wanted to just relay two things that happened, because you do remember where you were at times like this. My children were in the newsroom. They were on their way to a movie, which they did not go to, of course. But they were there, and when they went out, I said something I guess a father should not say in a home situation, but often does say in a newsroom situation, said some nasty word or something like "oh something," and the power went out, and I went there, and my children's eyes just lit up, because they don't usually hear me talk like this. At least I hope they don't. And the newsroom came alive.
Yes, it did.
With the pulse of a major event here, and the kids were just in awe of the energy that was around here. I wanted to relay that, because we were all going to be asking, where were you when the lights went out? The governor also saying, Liz, the effort to restore power is immense. We're going to go back to Governor Pataki. Only his audio as we roll over video of something unrelated.
No, we've talked with officials at every level from the White House on down, but I don't want to the extent that there is a conclusive determination as the cause, I'm sure others would announce that.
Is it official reports or reports from television? Or?
No, not from television. Communications, but no one is sure.
Of the total power consumed in New York State, can you say, or maybe Mr. Flynn, how much is coming in from Hydro-Quebec?
Yeah. Yeah, we just don't know at this point.
Well, Delaney, can you explain why the New York power plants that are okay can't just start up?
I'll try, but that's a question that obviously I asked as well. And the reason is that it's the power grid is not just a plant to a local regional user. It is connected to a regional grid, so that Power sometimes will be transmitted from that plant to other parts of the regional grid, and power from other parts will be transmitted to the region, so that just to start up that plant runs the risk of damaging the plant if the entire regional grid all of a sudden either has over demand or a sudden surge of supply, so that we have to be careful that we start up in a way that doesn't risk damaging plants that have gone through this orderly process of being shut down.
Have you or your aides talked to Tom Ridge?
We've talked with Homeland Security. We've talked with the White House. We've talked with almost all the appropriate officials that you'd think we would have. And there's no speculation as to any terrorist-related cause at this point. I wish I could sit here and say that at certain time, this part of the state will have power. We can't do that. We are working very hard, hopefully hours. How many hours, I don't know, but certainly in all likelihood, not minutes. And part of the reason that some areas have power and others don't is that when there is limited capacity, some of the utilities have been doing rolling blackouts so that they restore power to an area for a period of time and then restore power to other areas, which from experience shows rather than just have one area that has power all the time, that is the most effective way to deal with what is a temporary shortage in power.
Governor, the temperatures tomorrow are supposed to be in the
Yes.
90s. Is the state suggesting at all that areas where power is restored will not use air?
People should not, tonight, if they get power back, they should not use any unnecessary appliances. And tomorrow, if they have power, this is not just tonight, tomorrow, unless there is something we're not anticipating now, people should be very, very reluctant to turn on an appliance unless there's some real health need. We don't want people, and air conditioners are something that people should very, very think at least twice before turning them on, and if they do, turn them on at a much higher temperature than would ordinarily be the case. And unless there's some health concern, and unless there's a significant restoration of power beyond what we know of at this point, people should be reluctant to turn them on at all. Let me just again thank you for being here. I think it's important that the people of New York know that all government levels are working closely together to make sure that power is restored as quickly as possible. There are no unmet needs from any communities at this point, and the state and the localities are prepared to respond to any needs. If individuals have an emergency, they should call 911. The system is working. If a local municipality or government has needs, they should contact their county emergency command office, because we are in constant communication with them, and we will be in constant communication 24 hours a day throughout the night. Thank you very much.
You're listening to Governor George Pataki at a news conference, and I'm not sure where that was, but I believe it was in here in New York City, in Manhattan. He had several important things to say. First, he estimated half the people of the state of New York without power, as you're looking at a shot from Newscopter 7. 10 million plus people. They will measure the return of power in a matter of hours, not minutes. 600 trains and subways were stranded. All but 6 of them have been evacuated. There are 6 still they're trying to evacuate. State police and National Guard are on reserve. They are not needed as of yet, according to the governor. It is 7:32, almost 7:33. I'm Bill Ritter along with Liz Cho. There is less than a half an hour until sunset.
I want to go ahead and just recap for you what has happened this afternoon. Just shortly after 4 o'clock this afternoon, a massive power outage striking New York City. It went as far north as Canada, as far south as New Jersey, west to Ohio, and east to Connecticut. Millions of people left without power. The reason, from what we understand at this point, the mayor saying that the Niagara power grid, basically it was a naturally occurring problem. The Niagara power grid power plant, it simply overloaded. There initially were some concerns with the Con Ed facilities down on 14th Street because there was black smoke billowing out from them. We now understand that that is a naturally occurring issue when the Con Ed facilities automatically shut down when there's such a widespread power outage. Right now, Con Ed says they are hoping to restore the power by 11 o'clock in New York City at the very earliest, and that is an optimistic guess at this point. On parts of Long Island, they are hoping to restore the power by 9 o'clock this evening, much earlier. Airports, at this point, the FAA has issued a ground stop at all New York and Newark airports, which essentially means that planes are on the ground, will stay on the ground. Any airline that needs to land, that is in the air, will be permitted, but at this point, they're hoping that the airlines will stay in the air until it is necessary for them to land. Trains, at this point, as you heard Brill say just a few minutes ago, 600 trains, subway cars were stranded when this all happened, but now all but 6 have been evacuated, and he said a large part due to the cooperation with law enforcement agencies throughout the cities and states, and really New Yorkers helping each other out. As you can see, thousands of people pouring out into the streets all afternoon, leaving work, leaving their homes, trying to get home, and it's been a very difficult, long day for those people. It has been very, very hot out. We were just about 20 minutes away from sunset, cooling off just a little bit outside right now. At this point, there's a level 4 mobilization. About 40,000 New York police officers will be on standby tonight. State troopers and National Guard put on reserve. The governor saying only if necessary will they be brought in.
By the way, if any New York police officer is listening to this, you're to report to your command immediately, with the exception of those scheduled to go on the midnight shift. They should report at midnight. Liz, you said that the planes were grounded. We're now getting some conflicting reports about planes not being able to land, but planes taking off. So we're going to try to check that out and see exactly what that is about. The Niagara-Mohawk power grid up in upstate supplies power to much of the Northeast and includes 5 states. Liz, you heard Liz mention the areas mainly hit. The governor clearly saying today this grid power system clearly didn't work. They thought they had it solved after the 1965 power outage, which lasted 25 hours, and he said clearly it just didn't work. The grid system didn't work, and we thought that it would be solved and not happen again, and clearly that did not
And the
happen.
governor also had mentioned that President Bush has clearly been made aware of this situation. Today he was in South California trying to raise money for a re-election campaign, and he's been monitoring the situation.
Terrorism is not a factor. Not that they know of anyway. They have all but ruled that out, according to the FBI, Mayor Bloomberg making that announcement. And also, there is no indication that that computer virus that was going around earlier this week that played havoc with emails and computers and the internet was any problem as well. Email is how people are communicating because some of the cell phones are out and many of the phone systems. If you have a phone system that plugs into the power, you are not having much success.
No. We're going to head over to Nina Pineda. Nina, can you hear us?
Yes, I can, Liz.
Can you tell us where you are?
Washington Heights, I think, right?
I'm still in Washington Heights, where, Liz, you were talking about people starting to cool off as it starts to get into nightfall. And what thing people are doing here is they're taking it into their own hands. They're taking off the caps on fire hydrants to try and cool off. We noticed one down the street and one up. We're right at 180th Street and St. Nicholas Avenue. People should not be doing that. I understand that it's hot, and anyone that can see us here on TV shouldn't do that, because in case there was a fire, and there aren't any reported right now, but the potential for fire happening when the power is out like this, it does increase. That would decrease the water pressure. So don't try to cool off by using the fire hydrants. There's a lot of people here that are taking it out, sitting outside, trying to cool off. And could you move to the side here? We're going to talk to Rosa Ruiz, who's said you're hoping that the power comes back on before nightfall. And why is that, Rosa?
Why? Because of the vandalism and people going crazy. They don't know what to expect. People think there's terrorists involved in this sabotage, and people with health hazard. You know, like me, I depend on an asthma machine. I'm a diabetic, and people that are in health problems with no light, they will.
Yeah, Rosa told me earlier that she didn't want to go home right away because she does live with her daughter alone. They're a little bit concerned, just a personal perspective here. And she also is an asthmatic and uses a machine that plugs in to breathe. So she's just trying to stay calm. And you said there were some worries about terrorism. Terrorism, obviously, as we've been reassuring the public, is not involved. This is just a blackout. But you remember the blackout? You said you were 17 the last time there was a blackout. Yes. What was that like in Washington Heights?
In 75. It was horrible. All the store was vandalized, and we used to own a store, my mother, and they took everything they could get their hands on. And I hope the people of New York City stay calm and don't go and do nothing stupid like that happened in that blackout, because it's not right.
Okay.
People should be united, you know?
And that's what people in this neighborhood are doing. People have been helping each other, helping their neighbors. Some people have those electric gates that you need a key and, of course, the electricity to close. And they're just going to stay here all night long and man their stores until the power does come back on. We have seen a lot of police mobilizing in vans in this area. And, of course, as you were explaining, that anyone that's not on a midnight tour should report to their local precinct. A police car just went by, and one officer gave me a thumbs up. They certainly have the situation under control. There are some fears, as people were saying, who lived through the last blackout. But every corner is manned, and people seem to be pulling together and helping each other. They don't have any fears that there might be some criminal vandalism. That's the very latest from Washington Heights. We're live on Mina Pineda. Back to you, Liz and Bill.
Hey, Nina, stay with us, all right? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay, you know, the last power outage in New York was in Washington Heights, so a couple 100,000 people 4 years ago, in 1999, when it was very hot. People in Washington Heights were very angry. They said, you know, we didn't have the support, the grid support, when that happened. This obviously affecting everyone. There has been much, and I don't know if you heard, did you hear the governor talk at all?
We heard him sporadically, as we could only hear the audio and couldn't see him, but he was coming in and out where we are, Bill.
There was some politics involved, because he did say he wants to see some of these new power stations that a lot of communities have opposed. They don't want a power plant in their neighborhood built. Has anyone mentioned first the last power outage back when it really affected Washington Heights, and also what could be done about this? Anybody angry about this?
Actually, Bill, that's funny that you mentioned that, because somebody did come up to the van earlier and he's identified himself as a community activist, and he said, let's see who gets the power first. If Washington Heights doesn't get power, like happened, as you mentioned, a couple of years ago, they're wondering if maybe other parts of Manhattan will get power before it starts coming up here to 180th Street. And as you mentioned, there was a lot of opposition. Certainly Eyewitness News has covered a lot of neighborhood opposition to getting those support power plants that have gone up in areas that already have a lot of environmental hazards. And that's why that's been opposed. But in situations like this, maybe that would be different if some of these had gone in place, like you were mentioning.
I want you to do me a favor, Nina. Keep track of that angle of this story as this unfolds. We are going to be with you as your power goes back on, hopefully, throughout the night and into the morning hours. And Nina, that's a very good angle to watch out for. Tell us exactly when that is. By the way, folks, out there, and Nina, thank you. Keep us posted of that. As the power comes back on in your neighborhood, you heard the governor saying it's going to be these rolling blackouts. We heard Anthony Johnson say at his house, the power came on and then shut down again. As the power comes on, call us, let us know, email us or call in. Let us know where it is. We can report where power's coming back.
And the governor and the mayor both saying if you have any appliances, take them out of their electrical sockets, disconnect them all, because then when the power does come on, it will then lessen the demand on the electricity, and then hopefully more people can get power.
Here's some airport information.
Yes, we have an update on the airports. From what we understand, Newark and LaGuardia have reopened. JFK still no planes taking off there, but Newark and LaGuardia have reopened. However, if you do have a flight taking off sometime tonight or tomorrow, you can expect major delays. Obviously, for many hours this afternoon, all three airports were shut down. No flights taking off. Very few flights landing, so expect major delays from here on out.
You know, you think about this. This is August in New York. A lot of people take off, plan vacations. The Labor Day holiday is within sight. The airports are going to be crowded anyway. You can imagine that this weekend at the airports is going to be just a mess. Do we have, Dave, do we have a list of the Red Cross stations where people can get water? We do. Let's throw that up for people if we could, unless you want to go somewhere else first, but I think it's a good, there we are.
It is very hot outside still, and if you need water, you can go to any one of these Red Cross stations, and they are handing out free water, 3 bottles of water, and they're Grand Central, Penn Station, Port Authority, Brooklyn Bridge areas, Jamaica Plains, Flatbush, the bus station, the George Washington Bridge, LaGuardia Airport, and JFK Airport. So if you are thirsty, or if you need a break, please stop, take a rest, get something to drink. It is very, very hot out still.
You also have water for the people in the newsroom here. In my office, if anyone needs water, there's plenty in there, because there is no air conditioning anywhere.
No.
You're going to need to hydrate very much, and that will help keep you cool. Sandra Bookman on the Upper West Side. Sandra?
There was a murmur of joy from the crowd of people that's standing here right now. They just heard the news that the airports are at least reopening, even though there's lots of delays. One of the most interesting things about all this, since the power went out several hours ago, is, of course, how are New Yorkers handling it. With me now, Zulma Rodriguez, Bob Blake. They, believe it or not, had the unfortunate bad luck to be opening a new business today in the South Bronx. Did you get any business done at all, Zoma?
We were open till 4:30. It's a call center, so everything's computerized. And the phones went out, the computers went out, and we thought maybe it was a circuit. You know, we were waiting patiently, and then we were told that, you know, all of New York is out. So.
Now, how'd you make your way back up here?
We were in the South Bronx, so we hailed down a cab, and I'll tell you, he was cursing us out all the way. He dropped us off at 72nd Street, and my colleague here, Bob, lives in New Jersey, so I said, this is the best place to be. Come to my area, and we've been hanging out.
Now, Bob, you made a good point here. You said that even though things were uncomfortable, it's hot as heck today, you came all the way from uptown, came downtown in a cab, there were no traffic lights, but you said New Yorkers have been handling all this surprisingly well.
They just take it in stride. This is one of the first major events since 9/11. The power's out, and no one really knew what was happening, but no one's running in fear or anything. Everyone's out. You should see it's just great. Everyone's out directing traffic. We just saw a traffic accident stop there by just someone on the street helping direct traffic. It makes me proud to be here today. It's just great.
Quick question, how are you getting home to New Jersey tonight?
Well, I'm just going to have some patience, and I need to take the path home tonight, so when the path runs, I'll go home, and worst comes to worst, I'll crash on her floor, and, you know, okay. That should be the worst thing that ever happens to me.
You guys are both optimistic. Now, there's a guy I want to introduce to you.
I'm going to Jersey.
Okay. Steve here is opening up a GNC store not far from ABC. You have been sitting on the corner with your doors open to your truck all day. Tell us about that and why.
New York's a great place, and I have to say, I have stores around New York City, but by far, and I love all New Yorkers, but by far, the people who live and work in Lincoln Center are the nicest. And for some reason, it was our source of information, and I couldn't shut it off.
You got to fill them in. Now, you had the doors of the truck open. You were running the radio all day. It was like being back in the 30s and 40s. No TV. People were at the radio, gathered around your truck all day.
Oh, I didn't feel that way. I felt very comfortable. People were great. Mayor Bloomberg did a great job getting us the information that it wasn't terrorism, and things happened, so we dealt with it. We all had a lot of fun.
You feel like you did your part to keep people informed by holding that truck open, keeping the radio on?
Absolutely, and I'm sure they'll do their part and come to my store once it opens next week.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.
All right, New Yorkers are taking this all in stride, hoping, against hope, that the lights are on a lot sooner than Con Ed or the city seems to think they will be back on. Back to you guys.
Well, we hope that's true. Thank you, Senator. There's about 10 minutes left before sun set. I'm looking now. We now have a graphic that says the blackout of 2000. I love that. I wish we could have that over under us. You know, it's going to be different. I mean, we've handled this very well. I think New Yorkers have really come together in a wonderful way. It's going to be different when the sun goes down. We have about another half hour of the gloaming until it really gets dark, maybe even 45 minutes. And, you know, people are going to go home. They're going to light candles. Be careful with candles. If you have children especially, don't just leave the candles burning everywhere. Be careful where you light them. Use your batteries. Use your flashlights. Hopefully, the lights will start coming back. They say at around 11. We don't.
We hope so. And Governor Pataki saying once it does get dark, there are some concerns of possible looting, possible violence. He says New Yorkers respond to crisis by acting responsibly, and it's time to help others, and they're hoping that people will go out, check on their neighbors, especially if you have elderly neighbors, to see how they are doing, how they are coping with this very, very hot heat. Make sure that they are hydrated, and really just to make sure that everyone is okay, and just be relaxed and try to be patient.
You bet.
One thing that I was observing with Sandra's live shot there was how quiet it seemed here on Columbus Avenue on the Upper West Side. That has been a completely different scene than what we have seen for most of the day. And I believe we have Shannon Stone, who is up in Newscopter 7. And as we've seen all afternoon, Shannon, traffic has just been absolutely horrendous.
It absolutely has, Liz. But here is a sight for sore eyes. If you look closely at it, yes, exactly. Lights. These are the first ones that we have seen in the city. Now, to give you an idea of where this is, it may or may not make a difference. I don't know how the power is going to start to come back on, but this is just on the northeast corner of Bryant Park along 42nd Street between 5th and 6th Avenues. So we are starting to see some lights coming back on, although not very many. So, you know, there's the good news. Let's temper it a little bit with the bad news. Now, traffic is still a bit of a nightmare, although I have to say, keep in mind that this did happen at the height of the rush hour. Now things are starting to wind down. Bryant Park there on the right side of your screen. You can still see a tremendous amount of people in the area, but I have to say, traffic seems to be easing out from the east side to the west side of the city, and by that I mean that the east side starting to look a little bit better. West side, of course, course, going to suffer the most because that is where the Holland Tunnel and the Lincoln Tunnel are. Of course, the Port Authority bus terminal as well. And I'm going to have Captain Arthur Anderson move towards the west for me a little bit here. We're going to zoom in on the Port Authority bus terminal so you can see just how many people are still standing around waiting for buses, waiting to move around the city. And I'll take this opportunity also to just bring you south a little bit and take you down to Madison Square Garden and, of course, Penn Station. Now, we showed you this picture earlier, and it has certainly eased out significantly in terms of the people standing around the area. We'll bring you first over to 7th Avenue so that you can see what's happening there, and I'm just going to bring my iris up a little. You can see just dots of people standing around the streets, but certainly a lot less people around the area, and that is very significant. Of course, 8th Avenue there, and you can see just a lot of traffic. This, the stuff that heads towards the Lincoln Tunnel, and you're going to see the same thing as you get towards Lower Manhattan and towards the Holland Tunnel. Now, the big problem all night, and we showed it to you with Dave Evans as well, the West Side Highway. This is where the New York Waterway Ferry is picked up, and just a swarm of people. Believe it or not, this crowd has eased out some, but yeah, not much. I mean, it's just terrible. And what they've done at this point, you know, for a while we were showing you cars moving through the